what you've all been waiting for.
Pick yourself up and dust yourself down. Open up your eyes and take a look around. I'm standing on the edge, not afraid to look down. Life is a fight. I can see your vultures flying overhead. Broken bones scattered, my left foot dead. I'm standing on the edge, not afraid to look down. Ooh, yeah. Life is a fight.
Showtime! The moment is now.
Let's get the questions started here on the Instagram side of things. And Jay will be here too, by the way. Jay is here, intrepid producer. Jay, do you have the air conditioner next to your audio system again? Are you gonna
The
do
air
that whole
conditioner-
bit one more time?
The air conditioner has been turned off, so even though
can't
it's
hear
93
Jay.
degrees.
Shocker that the he's already effing this up.
I'm here.
Jay?
I'm here. Yeah, the air conditioner is off. It's very hot. It's 93 degrees, and I will sweat it out for the benefit of this program.
All right, very good. Well, don't get a heat stroke, because if you do, I'm going to laugh at you in an unrelenting kind of way. All right, let's get this started. A lot to get to, not a moment to waste. Let's do this, Jay. First question is from MHaydock05. Who did we learn more about this weekend, Till or Whittaker? You probably learned a little bit more about Whittaker, I would argue. This actually turned out to be one of those situations where the fight itself, first couple of rounds were great, where both guys got dropped. But I think in the end, what you really learned, or actually the way in which it played out, was probably beneficial for both guys, in the sense that while Till lost, he's the younger of the two. He still has more room to grow. It's only his second fight at 185 pounds, and he looked pretty good against Whittaker. Whittaker even saying it was a chess match. It was hard to figure out. He couldn't get a read on the feints. He was really complimentary of the task at hand and how difficult it was for him up until the final bell. And so you thought, well, maybe Till didn't get the win, but he looked like a pretty capable operator in there. Whittaker benefits because A, he won, B, he also dropped Till himself. And while he got dropped, you didn't get the sense that he was shop-worn. You didn't get the sense that whatever burden was laid on him physically from the Romero fights were ones that he could not overcome, that he was stuck in these positions, that this was something that was going to be a real major Achilles heel. I don't know that either of them came out of this fight being like, wow, these guys are definitely going to give Adesanya a run for his money, but Adesanya has his hands full with Paulo Costa. And so in the sense that neither of them had their weaknesses overly magnified, but I thought their strengths kind of were, it's really not that bad. Till comes up short, but is young, can regroup. Whittaker gets his hand raised, gets back in the win column, does so, by the way, using his wrestling, much more patient execution. Some of the things he was throwing looked a little bit one note. There were times where he was trying some of his bag of tricks, and you could tell he was going back to the well over and over a little bit, maybe too much. But in terms of just getting a necessary W and then using a broader array of skills to put himself in a position to either get a title shot from the winner of Costa and Adesanya, or at a bare minimum, number one contender fight, depending what UFC wants to do at this point. It's not really clear. Yeah. So I'd say you probably learned a little bit more about Whittaker in terms of just how damaged is he. Probably some, maybe not as much as our worst fears. Till, how good is he? Maybe not as much as we had thought, but he has time to grow into it, and I think that's the key. All right. Question 2 from J_Harv28. There is a small wave of fans stating Till won the fight versus Whittaker. Do you feel they have justified points or just bias? Well, every fan has bias. Wouldn't be exclusive to anybody, any one particular group. No, there's not much of a case, I think, for Till to win. It's close, right? So each of the first 2 rounds will go one way. It gets a little bit tight through the middle, and then at the end, I thought Whittaker was sort of the guy who had done enough. He was landing a little bit more consistently. I haven't seen the fight metric numbers. By the way, all those numbers they show on the screen during the fight itself are not worth taking seriously. They're always approximate and wrong, so don't look at them. But if we look at the actual final numbers, actually, they didn't score Darren Till even getting a knockdown. That's funny. They gave Whittaker 1 in the second round. So they scored about the same amount of strikes in the first. Whittaker landing 42 to 43 for Till, 15 of 3 in the second, 13 to 6 in the third for Whittaker, 13 to 8 in the fourth, and then 17 to 12 in the fifth. Now those are numerical totals, not qualitative. But in terms of overall strikes landed, the significant ones, it was 69 for Whittaker, 41 for Till. Whittaker attempting 188, Till attempting 108. And then he got 2 of 13 takedowns as well, and was credited with a pass. It's going to be hard to argue that Darren Till won. Fans are going to pick the guy that they like, and that's understandable, but there's not much of a case. All right, moving on. Question 3 from Ad Miakala. Who do you think is a tougher matchup for Whittaker next, Cannonier or Hermanson? All right, so styles make fights. Cannonier beat Hermanson, but that doesn't tell us necessarily who's a tougher matchup for Whittaker. So who would be a tough matchup for Whittaker? Guy who could take him down ostensibly, be bigger than him, good gas tank, counter fighter more naturally. I don't know that I would favor either guy to beat him. Hermanson could make it interesting on the ground, potentially. Right, because he's got a bit of that Khamzat Chimaev bit where when he goes for the takedown, he likes to pass right away. He doesn't waste a whole lot of time. So there's that. Cannonier, on the other hand, is a little bit more well-rounded. The thing is, I just don't think Cannonier is much of a matchup on the feet. And Hermanson could maybe give him a little bit more trouble on the ground, so maybe Hermanson. But neither guy is exactly... I would not expect either guy to win in that case. That doesn't mean that they can't or they won't, but those will not be the guys that I pick to do that. All right, moving on. Question 4 from Sports Guru 4000. Who should Till fight next? Great question. So if we examine the rankings, which are, again, very approximate, but provide at least something of a roadmap for the future, I wouldn't want to do the Gastelum rematch. Hermanson just won, which means he's going to be closer to the top 5 than Till. So you could do the winner of Shabazian and Brunson. That'd be an interesting one, right? That's probably the way I would go. Shabazian and Brunson's going to have a 3-round main event in the next UFC. Shabazian appears to be just on an absolute rocket ship, hits hard, makes great decisions, puts tons of pressure on guys, young, athletic. It's amazing, right? If Shabazian ends up being really, really good, which we're getting very much ahead of ourselves, but let's just say for the sake of argument that he does, Shabazian's going to end up being the second guy that Edmund Tarverdian has as a UFC champ. I realize that's getting way ahead of ourselves. I understand. But if it does happen, Tarverdian has been widely maligned as something of a fraud. And for him to have not one but 2 different fighters to be UFC champions, it's could you imagine a coach with a worse reputation and a better resume in that sense? It'd be hard to imagine him. So I would probably go the winner of Brunson and Shabazian. That's the way I'd be looking at it. Nah, let's go next. All right, we got Dip3886 says, from a technical standpoint, how does Whittaker versus Till match compare against Volkanovski versus Holloway 2? From a technical standpoint, how does it match? Not much. A little bit similar, where you had Till sort of tall, somewhat counter-fighting, standing in a southpaw position, which made things a little bit different. It was a little bit similar, where you have Whittaker sort of blitzing from the outside, sort of feinting, changing up looks, looking like he's going one way, then goes the other, smaller, using wrestling a bit to take down and sort of control the taller guy late. there are some overlaps, but the way in which Whittaker strikes relative to Volkanovski is just incredibly different. Volkanovski is constantly using motion. He's not bouncing on his feet. He's a step and slider. He's really splitting timing all the time, using leg kicks as a rhythm and stance disruptor. That's not exactly who Whittaker is. Whittaker is a little bit more. He does some of that, of course. He's a little bit more. The two are very different still. Whittaker's a little bit more like Wonder Boy, where he's bouncing blitz. That's not who Volkanovski is. And Till has something similar to Holloway, but they are all sufficiently different. All right, from Sean Kelly 88. Looking at Darren Till's career so far, is he overrated, underrated, or any other adjective you might find applicable? To me, he has been both. The problem with Till is that he's changing fight over fight, not merely in terms of his development as a fighter, but in terms of his approach to the game, figuring out how he wants to compete, changing weight classes, and he's still very young. I think, was he 26, 27, something like that? How old is Darren Till? Let me make sure I get that before I misstate it. Darren Till is currently sitting at, a guy who was born in 1992. I was in 7th grade in 1992. He's 27 years old. So, he has still just not quite figured himself out yet, which means as he has beaten good guys and put himself in a position to do well in various divisions, some of those leaps happened in ways where the bracketing wasn't quite right. What does bracketing mean? I always use this analogy. The way in which modern military artillery works is something called bracketing, where the Russians invented this, where people don't realize this. Those big cannons that fire, they don't need to have direct hits. It's not what you need. You just need to get close. And the way they do it is they would purposely overshoot and then undershoot and then use that as a bracketing system to get closer to something approximating a kill shot. We have sort of overshot him and then underplayed him and then overshot him and then underplayed him. I think the general process will tell us over time where he ends up being, but he is still very much a work in progress, so we don't really know. So, was he overrated maybe heading into the Tyron Woodley fight? Probably. Was he somewhat underrated, I think, heading into the Kelvin Gastelum fight? Probably. And then this one, he was very, very competitive. It wasn't like it was some blowout. Again, the calls that he may have won or should have won, I think, are kind of silly, but it was not some, dramatic difference. I mean, it was tight to the end. So you just have to realize a lot of guys figure out their games early, like, who am I? How do I want to fight? How do I do this? How do I get better? And some take time, and it looks to me like Till is very much in the formulation of that still. Some of his skills are they're kind of nascent, and they take time to get going. So let's just see. Let's just see how things go. Let's just see how he develops. That's never a great answer. It's like, is he overrated, underrated? Both. That sounds like you're dodging. But at various times, some people are just easier to peg as, okay, this guy is very, very promising. He can go far. This one isn't. And then there are guys like Till that have these moments of inspiration followed by these reality checks, and you never know which way is coming or going. If he was 37, I would be much more dismissive of his upside. But because he has the big wins and he's 27, I am much more willing to say there is a lot of development in his future that will, in the next 3 years, you'll know more. By 30, you'll have a much keener sense of who he is. All right, from 76 Tharms, 76th A Arms. Yeah, 76th Arms. Did Whittaker's post-Romero Wars burn out contribute at all to his loss against Izzy? If so, would he fare better in a potential rematch now that he is supposedly motivated again, or is Israel just simply that much better? I did not see a whole lot in this fight that would tell me that the chance of beating Adesanya went up significantly. If you want to say it would go better than the first fight, sure. Right? Because he was using his wrestling in this one. He was taking his time. He was much more patient. If he didn't like the look, he was resetting. He was resetting. There was all kinds of stuff he was doing that was much more deliberate and effective this time than the first time out. I'm perfectly willing to admit that. And I also believe that how do you do 10 rounds with Yoel Romero and it has zero effect? Really? 10 rounds with that guy and you just came out on the other end the exact same. I don't believe that either. Still, perhaps some of the pronouncements of the damage are somewhat overstated. And it is clear that he was able to be much more thoughtful this time. I did not find his last approach to be all that thoughtful. It seemed hurried to me, and he paid the consequence for it. So can he beat Adesanya? Maybe. Can he do better than he did the first time? No doubt in my mind. I still didn't see anything coming out of this, though, that really told me that he had some kind of approach that would trick Adesanya or fool him or, sort of expose some kind of weakness. I just didn't see that. From @Little Cameron, in the post-fight press conference, Till noted that Whittaker's Wrestling facilitated some of his striking, and therefore Izzy would be an easier fight for him. To what extent was Whittaker's Wrestling a factor, and how would you see Till-Adesanya matchup play out? Till noted Whittaker's Wrestling facilitated some of his striking. Yeah, I mean, the level changing, he would press him against the fence, then drill him on the clinch breaks. Dude, people keep doing this thing with Adesanya. They're like, oh, all you have to do is this one thing a little bit different, and then the fight itself will be totally different. This rank disrespect of him is just alarming to me. Yes, again, there is no denying if you can establish a takedown threat, bring someone's hands down, make them look in the wrong direction, misjudge an attack, misjudge the timing of an attack, and get pressed against the fence, which reduces your movement. All of these things will contribute to your striking in a very meaningful way. If you guys think that Adesanya also doesn't know that and that he doesn't have an answer for that, I'm not really sure what to tell folks. Till was probably doing the right thing to be complimentary of Whittaker, and that's fine. And again, I am perfectly happy to admit that a rematch between them would be probably a 5-rounder, right, in all likelihood, or certainly go past the second. I mean, I think that's completely reasonable. But that these are some kind of, dim mock, holy crap, ace in the hole, what are we going to do now kind of scenarios. No, that's not at all what this is. Not even close. And even if you credit those 2 takedowns that he got, it wasn't like there was a significant amount of damage that resulted from them. I mean, they may have been disrupting to rhythm and expectations, and that's not nothing. But that's not enough to beat Adesanya. Frankly, if I can just be honest about this, I actually feel like Paulo Costa is not getting the respect at all that he deserves. I don't think he's as cerebral a striker as Adesanya, but I don't think that's not what matters. That's not what matters. What matters for Costa is that he is a brutally hard puncher. He has a ridiculous chin. He has not as much risk management, but that aids his current style perfectly. Right? To me, it's like who can make more mistakes in that fight, Adesanya or Costa? Costa's style is sort of predicated on, a few mistakes. You got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. That is not Adesanya's style. To be honest, everyone is focusing on how would a second fight with Whittaker go. You better wait to see how Costa does first. To me, Costa is easily the biggest threat that Adesanya has ever faced in the UFC, for sure. And I would not be at all surprised if Costa won. And you guys know how very high on Adesanya's game that I am. I think he's sort of the modern archetype of striker. Costa is not, but Costa has such difficult to deal with forms of physicality that everyone talking about how he's not cerebral enough. Man, talk about missing the forest for the trees on this one. Put your attention there, and then we'll see what happens. Worrying about a rematch between those two right now is not where I would be focusing my attention. Till coughed a lot during the fight. This comes to us from J. Patty Dowd. Till coughed a lot during the fight. You think he got a bad warm-up, or has he been smoking mad stogies in Liverpool? I don't know.
The bout you've all